Hi there, and welcome to the Nourish Mamas podcast, where nutrition, weight loss, and motherhood meet. I'm Mallory, a registered dietitian, mom, and founder of Daily Habits Nutrition. Around here, you'll find practical nutrition advice, sustainable weight loss strategies, meal planning shortcuts, and honest conversations about motherhood, business, and building healthy habits that actually fit your life. Whether you're navigating postpartum, perimenopause, trying to lose weight naturally, or using a GLP-1 medication, or maybe you just want to feel more energized and confident in your body, you're in the right place. My goal is to help you take the guesswork out of healthy eating, simplify nutrition, and show you that lasting change does not come from perfection. It comes from the small daily habits that add up over time. So grab your coffee, head out for a walk, fold that pile of laundry, or settle in for a few minutes just for you. I'm so glad you're here. Let's dive in. Hi there, and welcome back to the Nourished Mamas podcast. We're going to be answering the question today of, why am I doing everything right and still not losing weight? I hear some version of this all the time because when it comes to weight loss, we know what we should be doing, but a lot of the time it tends to be either the consistency or something that feels like it's getting in the way. So one of the main things that I work on with clients is figuring out why what they're doing now isn't working. So doing that troubleshooting. And it's not necessarily like you need to try harder, but typically that when you're doing everything right and the scale isn't moving, something might be slightly off. You don't have to overhaul everything. We just need to figure out what's going on and what piece of what you're doing isn't giving you the results that you want so that we can fix it. So essentially, we're looking to figure out what is going on and then whether or not you are currently on a plateau, if your weight has been stuck for a while, like what's not working, and then what we can adjust. So the first thing to really look at is whether or not you're actually on a plateau. So depending on where you're at in your weight loss journey, especially like for the women I work with that are on GLP-1 medication, this can get a little skewed feeling because 1 week without weight loss can feel like a plateau when it really is not. So also, like if you are trying a new diet or you're trying new behaviors and you haven't seen the scale move and it's been like 1 or 2 weeks, that's not necessarily a plateau. That just means your body is getting used to what's going on. A lot of the time, if you are losing fat during that time, our body works against losing fat in a lot of ways. Typically, it will hold on to the space in the fat cells as long as it can by adding water to it for them to get refilled later. But as your body adapts and realizes like, oh, we're actually not refilling these fat cells with more fat, we're going to let go of the water and they're going to shrink. So typically, that's when you see the scale stay stable, not changing, maybe fluctuating a teeny tiny bit, and then you drop 3 pounds overnight. That's typically what's happening. You've been making progress for weeks, but your body doesn't show it. So a few days to a week is not a plateau. What we want to look at is the trends over several weeks, and there's a lot of different things that cause fluctuations. So depending on where you're at in your menstrual cycle, if you are in like your postpartum phase where you haven't gotten your cycle back yet, this may be hard to pinpoint. If you are in that perimenopause phase where your cycle has started getting really irregular, that can make it harder to pinpoint this too. But there are some normal cycle hormone related weight changes where our bodies will retain water. You'll end up a little bit bloated because the hormones are shifting. And we can also look at how you're eating that week. Maybe you had a little more sodium and your body's holding on to water. Sometimes if you eat a carb heavy meal, your body holds on to water in the form of glycogen. So there's different things that can cause water weight to go up. Maybe you're constipated, or you ate out, or you're traveling. There's different things that affect the scale, and it's only one measurement. A hard workout, if you're doing a lot of strength training, can lead you to retain water for a couple of days, so you might not see the progress for a minute. And then stress and sleep changes can also really impact your body's holding on to water and what would be called inflammation. So if you've heard that term around, a lot of the time it's stress related, or not having enough fiber, not having enough fruits and veggies. That all can lead to us feeling kind of puffy and bloated and gross and all of that. So typically, if it's just like in the moment that week, it's not necessarily a plateau. When we're looking for a plateau, that's usually like at least 4 weeks or more of no movement on the scale, other than those slight fluctuations. So a lot of the time, the scale doesn't tell you what it wants to do. I heard one of my clients this week called it a sneaky little liar, and I feel like that is completely apt, because the scale is just so frustrating sometimes. We can have weeks of consistency, eating your protein, eating your fiber, getting your breakfast in, all of these things, working out, walking, but then the scale doesn't change. But at the same time, maybe your clothes are fitting differently. Maybe you are showing up differently on a measuring tape and you can see like, oh, there's been inches lost. You may be gaining more strength, having better energy. Those are all things to look at, not just the scale. So what does doing everything right actually look like? So one thing that I want to make sure that you know is that effort does not necessarily mean you have the right strategy. So we want to look at patterns. Typically with my clients, there's a couple things that stand out to me as issues that may be keeping the scale stuck. And with those patterns, you may be eating healthy foods, but your portions are off, or you're under eating early in the day, you're skipping breakfast, you may eat breakfast but then not eat lunch, and then you're wondering like, why am I standing in the pantry later and overeating or grazing throughout the day? That can cause the body to really hold on to fat. You may have really great consistent weekdays. I was working with one client where her weekdays were pretty much meal prepped to the letter, and then over the weekend she would go out and have multiple drinks, 3 days out at restaurants, like 3 meals out, and then wonder why the scale was getting stuck. And it was mostly that, yeah, she was eating in a calorie deficit during the week, but then the weekend was really catching up to her. So we worked on getting weekends under control, and that's when she started seeing results. So a lot of the time, like I said, it's patterns. Sometimes you're having inconsistent protein with your meals. Maybe you're having breakfast, but it has no protein in it, and so it doesn't keep your blood sugar stable, and then it makes you crave sweets later. That's very common. And then maybe you're exercising every day, but you don't have movement throughout the day, and you have a very sedentary job. Bites of food here and there, drinking your calories, eating your kids' leftovers, grazing, all of this can contribute. So it's not that we're looking to find like, oh, this is the problem and we're going to judge you based on it. It's finding the things that are actually keeping you stuck and getting that accurate information to troubleshoot. So typically, the biggest helping factor would be consistency, and constantly shifting what your diet looks like, constantly changing your workouts up because something doesn't seem to be working, cutting carbs, adding cardio, skipping meals, getting a new plan every single Monday. This doesn't really help. It ends up just diluting everything that you're doing and making it harder to keep up with the changes you're making, and just gets very overwhelming very quickly. There's a lot of information out there on the internet, and there's a lot of people telling you that you should be doing X, Y, and Z, and then other people telling you to do the opposite. So it gets very confusing very quickly. So what we're looking for is consistency, because that's what's going to give us the most clues on what is happening and how we can really improve on it. So we're creating data that we can actually track, we can measure it, and see what is working. And I don't mean perfection. I don't think you need to be hitting your macros perfectly every single day. I don't think you need to count every single calorie or weigh your food on a scale. But having some consistent practices where your meals are balanced out, you're eating breakfast, you're eating lunch, maybe you're eating a snack at 4 p.m. if you have a long time in between lunch and dinner. We need to give something enough time before deciding that it's failed. So there's a lot of things to check on, And this is a lot of what I do with my clients, and I have the plateau audits. If you're really feeling stuck, we can go over this together, and you can book a time for that where basically I have you track your meals for a week, and then we'll take 45 minutes to an hour to really dive into what's working, what's not working, and what to change so that you leave that call with a plan. That's one of my favorite things to do, is really just pinpoint what's going on for you so that we can balance out all of the things that need to be balanced without feeling overwhelmed. So typically we're looking at what's really boring, and unfortunately with habit change and with creating a consistent plan, it's not flashy, it's not sexy, it's not fun necessarily, but it works. And that boring stuff is getting enough protein, balanced meals, meal consistency, meal timing, portions, if you're grazing, what your weekends look like, if you're eating out and drinking alcohol, your daily movement beyond just exercise, strength training, sleep, stress, all of this contributes. All of it could be part of what's going on, or none of it could be, and it could be just something else entirely, where, like I mentioned, like the meals and the balanced protein and all of that, but maybe you're not getting enough fiber, maybe you're not getting enough water in. So there's different things that we'll look at together and pinpoint which details are working against you. And it's not anything huge or secret, it's just keeping you fed. I think Tyler and I, my husband and I, were talking the other day. There was a comedian he was following, and he was talking about depression and anxiety, and how someone in his audience was talking about like going through a divorce and feeling depressed and anxious all the time. And the guy's response was really interesting, where he basically turned it around and asked the man, like, could you shift the language around this about instead of depressed and anxious to sad and nervous, and then look at your meals and say, like, are you eating 3 meals a day? Are you walking out in the sunlight? So that's vitamin D. Getting enough of that can really impact energy levels. Are you drinking enough water? Are you getting 8 hours of sleep a night? And so even like where this guy is a comedian, he's not a dietitian, he's not a doctor or anything like that, but he makes such a great point. If we're not doing the foundational things, it makes everything else harder. And that really does contribute to weight as well as how we're feeling in our body. So we're not looking to automatically start eating less. A common reaction to a scale stalling out is to restrict more. And for those who are on the GLP-1 medications, I see my clients go up on dose and then stop eating entirely. And then this creates undereating. It creates the right environment for you to feel starving later and overeat and then restrict again. So it's the cycle that keeps continuing. And if you're dieting, it's very similar, where you skip meals, you're doing really well throughout the day, and then all of a sudden at night, you're just eating everything in sight. So a lot of the time it takes some adjusting, but the most common thing is figuring out what exactly isn't working so that we know what to pinpoint. So maybe you need better structure in your meals. Maybe you do need more protein. A lot of the time protein's fine, and you need to look at portions or fruits and veggies, movement. Like, it can be so, I don't know. There's so many things that we can look at where, like, the commonalities tend to be the basics, and that's where things get stuck because we don't do the basics. So if you're looking for changes in your weight and you are wondering like why the scale hasn't been moving or it has shifted, there's things we can look at. And if you aren't able to figure out what's going on and you can't pinpoint it yourself and you feel like everything's going really well but the scale's just not moving, then I would love for you to book one of those plateau audit calls. You track your meals, your hydration, eating schedule, all of that for a week on your favorite app, and then we'll go over it together and we'll identify the sticking points so that you leave the call with a clear plan of what to adjust. And we're not going to overhaul everything. It's not going to be like a huge shift all at once. It's just finding the bottlenecks and making a targeted adjustment so that we can reassess. And if you aren't ready to just dive in and do a full set of weekly, like what your meals look like for the week, and you aren't quite ready to hop on a call, take the personalized weight loss roadmap quiz. That is a wonderful place to start, because I will tell you exactly which roadmap to look at in the Circle community. So whether you are postpartum, you are looking for weight loss in general, but not dealing with hormones, if you are in that perimenopause phase, or if you're on a GLP-1 medication, I have a specific roadmap for you. So that quiz will tell you exactly where to start. And if you do have any questions or you want to request any topics for the podcast, I'm always accepting ideas over on Instagram at Mallory Younglove. So you can definitely send me messages over there, ask me questions, let me know what you're working on and where you need help, and we can dive in and get started.